Welcome, everyone, and to those who may be joining online, literally from around the world as well. We probably say it every time, but still it bears repeating just how wonderful this is to be joining together like this in fellowship with other truth-seeking souls. Today, we have the second of 3 satsangas during our week of convocation, in which, as most of you know, we take various questions that have been sent in earlier in the year or even in past years, and we try to select those that seem most representative of the various topics of interest or of the various challenges that we all face on the spiritual path to one degree or another. I was hearing backstage the obscure, there are no questions on intuition this time. That would have been helpful, but hopefully what that announcement made sense, as Branche Shivan said, to those who needed to intuit it. So for today, building off of the wonderful points that Brother Kartikananda shared yesterday, I wanted to begin this afternoon with a little practice that some of you will remember from a satsanga that our president, Brother Chidananda, gave last year for members of the Voluntary League of Disciples. And this has to do with a particular technique of asking the Guru our personal questions and receiving our answers directly from within. As Brother Chidananda said at that event, one of the most powerful techniques that a disciple can practice is to apply this beautiful technique that's given in the Bhagavad Gita. And he first quoted a passage from our Guru's Gita commentary, God Talks with Arjuna, where the Lord Krishna says, understand this, by surrendering yourself to the Guru, by questioning the Guru and your inner perception, and by service to the Guru, the sages who have realized truth will impart their wisdom to you. And he then read out the specific technique itself, which goes as follows. A disciple residing far away from the Guru may practice a spiritual method of communion. The Guru, one with God, is present everywhere, including the wisdom center, the point between the eyebrows of all men. At the end of meditation each day, the disciple should concentrate at the point between the eyebrows and visualize his Guru. Thinking of him with love and devotion, the disciple should ask the questions he wants answered. If visualization of and concentration on the Guru are deep, the Chela will invariably receive silent answers to his questions in the form of accruing inner perceptions. In this way, the advanced disciple can contact the Guru even after the master has left the mortal flesh for invisible omnipresence. It's thrilling. And then in Brother Chidananda's inimitable way, he asked, are you game for this experiment? And what he did was to read out the questions one at a time, and then he had everyone practice the foregoing technique together for a short time before he gave his answers. In order, he said, that they might first experience and get a sense of this inner method of inquiry that our Guru was describing. So my intention for today is to take this suggestion from our dear president and try this for the first question only. But in this way, we might likewise imprint this method a bit in our memory and have it there to recall whenever we might have a need for inner guidance and support from the divine anytime, anywhere, not just at convocation. And in that meeting with the Voluntary League of Disciples, Brother Chidananda emphasized the value of this further and said, you know, my dears, what's so powerful about this, meaning this technique of attunement, is it's not a generic answer. It's a specific answer for you, for the circumstances that you are in. And he added, only a liberated Satguru can do that for the disciple, to provide that kind of guidance. And whether we know yet or feel that Paramahansa Yogananda is our Guru or not, if we appeal to him as to any liberated master, he or she will not ignore our plea, because they're just a manifestation of love and compassion. And as Jesus said, a human parent, if a child asks for bread, We won't give him a stone. In the same way, if we appeal to the divine, then we will receive those living waters that will forever quench our thirst. So for our first question then, I'll read it out. Somebody asked, please explain God to me. Is there anything else you want to know? We can just do this one question, then we can go home after this. Okay, let's sit in the meditation posture. Let's do this technique. Let's close our eyes. Concentrate at the point between the eyebrows. And now visualize the form of our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. And when Brother Chidananda was leading this, he said, pull that image of Gurudev from his beautiful photographs and enliven it there at the point between the eyebrows. So let's do that for a few moments. Now, thinking of him with love and devotion, let's all inwardly ask this question. Guruji, Master, friend, please explain God to me. Who is God? What is God? And as Guruji says, see if answers begin to come in the form of accruing inner perceptions, even in these few moments of looking within and practicing this inner method of communion. Again, asking Guruji, who is God? What is God? Please explain God to me. And then listen and feel. All right, no doubt even in these few moments, some of us may have already felt a sense of peace, which in fact our Guru said is itself God's response. It's the proof of his presence. And so this is already an aspect, a potential aspect of God. Many things may have come to us even in those few moments. Maybe it was we felt the Guru as an aspect of God. We felt God as various qualities, perhaps. So as mentioned, this is what we can do, and our Master said really we should do before deciding on any important matter, before embarking on any important undertaking, to first go within and ask God and Guru for their help and guidance. And I'm sure we know this doesn't mean the answer will necessarily come immediately, or as our Master said in golden letters, but rather, as Paramahansaji said, through accruing spiritual perceptions, meaning as we do our part through study of our Guru's teachings, through reflecting on them, through introspecting, and most of all through applying. Then we open a channel, our receptivity opens where God and Guru can drop those answers into our awareness and reveal to us the information that we're seeking. All right, back to our first question then. Can you explain God to me? In his small but spiritually dynamic book, Metaphysical Meditations, our Guru shared a beautiful experience and visualization he titled Expansion in Eternity, as a kind of etheric roadmap for us to follow and tune in with. And as I read it again, close your eyes if you wish, and just meditate with him on these perceptions, that they might again serve as his answer to this question. He wrote, eternity yawns at me below, above, on the left and on the right, in front and behind, within and without. With open eyes, I behold myself as the little body. With closed eyes, I perceive myself as the cosmic center, around which revolves the sphere of eternity, the sphere of bliss, the sphere of omniscient living space. I feel the Lord like a gentle breath of bliss breathing in my body of universes. I perceive him shining through the bright twinkles of all luminosity and through the waves of cosmic consciousness. I behold him as the light of solar inspiration, holding the luminaries of my thoughts in the rhythms of balance. I feel him as a bursting voice, leading, guiding, teaching secretly in the soul temples of all men and all creation. He is the fountain of wisdom and of radiant inspiration flowing through all souls. He is the fragrance oozing from the incense vase of all hearts. He is a garden of celestial blossoms and bright thought flowers. He is the love that inspires our love dreams. I feel him percolating through my heart, as through all hearts, through the pores of the earth, through the sky, through all created things. He is the eternal motion of joy. He is the mirror of silence in which all creation is reflected. Okay, open our eyes again. So, once more, if we have questions, even one as grand as what is God, in a sense, all we have to do is go to our Guru's teachings and read and absorb his God-tuned thoughts on any subject that we're interested in. And then the God consciousness, it says in the beginning of the lessons, the God consciousness that flows through those words will then flow into our consciousness as well, through the channel of the Guru and the Guru's teachings. So in this case, as we heard in what we just read, our Guru said God is, in effect, the essence of all things. God is the love in all hearts. God is the love in our heart. God is the joy that we seek. We've heard throughout the week that how the Hindu scriptures describe God as Sat Chit Ananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss, a bliss delightfully varied throughout eternity. I sometimes think it's like a fish swimming in the ocean saying, where's all this water everybody's talking about? You know, we're swimming, we're immersed in the ocean of God's presence that is in all things, that is all things. In his Whispers from Eternity, our Master wrote, O Father, when I was blind, I found not a door that led to thee. Thou hast healed my eyes. Now I discover doors everywhere. The hearts of flowers, we see flowers all the time. The voices of friendship, we're here with our friends, no doubt. Memories of lovely experiences. And our Guru said, each gust of my prayer opens a new entrance to the vast temple of thy presence. So in a way, the question maybe isn't what is God, but what isn't God is more apropos. And yet we might recall how even our Guru, remember, even after that experience of cosmic consciousness, he went to Sri Yukteswar and asked when he would find God. And Sri Yukteswarji said, certainly our Guru wasn't looking for some venerable being, off in some remote place in the cosmos, but he perceived that our Guru thought perhaps miraculous powers or phenomena was proof of God's existence. And that's when he helped our Master realize with finality that God is that ever-new joy, but with one most important addition, and that is that the Lord is also near and dear. And our Guru would go on to say the nearest of the near, the dearest of the dear. And so our Guru said to always think and feel and know, I have him. He is listening to me. My beloved is always with me. He is moving my hands. He is digesting my food. He is gazing at me through the stars. I probably spent a long time on this first question, what is God? But maybe that makes sense, right? If God is everything. But it also ties into our next question, that is Somewhat along these same lines, someone wrote, "From the time I was a baby, I grew up in a religion that portrayed God as a literal father. The long white hair and beard, long white robe, arms outstretched, protecting, providing, and loving his children in a very personal, human way. So I've always felt God as real, personal, and caring. A very human perception of God, but also very personal. As I travel on the SRF path to know God, I find myself introduced to a new conception of God as absolute spirit, unmanifested intelligence and energy. I am feeling a great sadness, as if I am losing my Father God, my personal God. The scientific path to God is giving me some troubles in my heart. If God is only spirit, intelligence, power, how can he care for me personally as a human? I don't want to lose that Father God that I have always felt and known, but I do want to follow the most true and expedient path to true God." Well, yes, we know, our Guru explains there is an aspect, the impersonal or unmanifested aspect of God, that is more of an expression of that absolute spirit beyond creation, resting only in its infinite, eternal nature of ever-new bliss. However, he never said that was the only concept, or that we should limit God to that definition or manifestation any more than we should limit God to a personal being only. We know God in his absolute form is beyond our limited human comprehension. But as our Master and all the great masters and saints proclaim, and as he said in his whispers, he's also right here. And he can be felt and perceived right now, as he said, in this room, in our hearts. In our Guru's anthology of talks, The Divine Romance, there's a chapter entitled Personal and Impersonal God. And from that talk, he said, many devotees who worship a personal aspect of God shun the concept of an impersonal God. And devotees of the unmanifest sometimes reject the idea of a personal God. But I say that God is both personal and impersonal. He is the absolute, beyond form, but he also makes himself manifest in many ways. If there were no blue sky, no vast space, no beautiful scenery, no moon or twinkling stars in the heavens, we would never have suspected the existence of God at all. The wonders we behold in this universe suggest to us the immanence of God. He is visible everywhere, in everything he has created, and in the workings of his intelligence governing all creation. So God, in its aspect as the Father, Mother of the universe, is again the immanent creator of all things. But Spirit is the creator of God, the first cause, that which was and will be, with or without any visible manifestation. I don't know if this helps convey the point, but sometimes I think it's like, for instance, with Rajarsi Janakananda, our first president, and then with all our presidents who have followed. They all defer and give credit to our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda for everything that they are and everything that they do. And our master said the same of his Guru, Sri Yukteswar. He said he owed everything to him, to his spiritual training, his love and wisdom. And Sri Yukteswar said of his Guru, Lahiri Mahashaya, greater he was as man and yogi than any other teacher whose life came within the range of my investigations. But what did Lahiri Mahashaya say? It's all Babaji. You know, his spiritual state is beyond comprehension. But then Babaji, when he appeared to our Guru, before our Guru came to America, said, the Heavenly Father has commanded me to tell you. And I think if we all went to the Heavenly Father, he would say, well, no, it's all Spirit. But then if we went to Spirit, I think Spirit would say, yeah, I'm it, you know. That's, what can I say? You got me, so. But Spirit, this unmanifested reality is also so beautiful, really. It reads like a meditation itself. Just imagine this divine intelligence, this infinite, eternal consciousness that always was. Nothing created it. It has no beginning, it has no end. It just is and has been and always will be. Again, it's inconceivable with our human consciousness. But beyond that, and even more astounding, is that the nature of this eternally existing, nothing created intelligence, at its essence, its goodness itself, and its very nature is ecstatic, divine love and joy. It's like, how is it possible? And from that comes all manifestation. From that comes every aspect of God that is near and dear to us. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, whose end even the greatest of all sages do not know, to him we bow again and again. It gives goosebumps, spiritual goosebumps. And yet after quoting this, in the very next sentence, our Guru added his own words and said, it is not necessary to know how big is the lake of sweetness, as long as we can quench our mortal thirst with its nectar waters. And so the Guru comes with that one purpose, to show us where that immortal spring can be found, and then how to drink endlessly of its nectar waters. Okay, now there were a number of questions submitted about meditation, which seemed only fitting, really, if we are again to learn how to drink of those waters and not just intellectualize about God, but so that we can actually know about God and know God directly for ourselves. So the first of these questions reads as follows. I live in a large city, and it's very noisy on my street. Almost daily, loud sirens from fire trucks or other traffic noise invade my meditations. Guruji says that I can disconnect the sense telephones, but my ears remain hyper-attuned to the external sounds of the world. Even while practicing the Om technique, I can still hear the world. Is there something I can do to help this? Any advice or help is welcome. And it's almost the same for all these questions. You know, if we were able to talk one-on-one, I might first ask a few practical questions. If you've been able to rearrange your schedule to at least meditate at the quietest time possible, or it's possible you could move somewhere else that's quieter. That's, of course, these things aren't necessary, but you would think if there's a practical way to negate this distraction. Or perhaps, if they consider using earplugs or some sort of noise-canceling headphones. It's not ideal, but the traffic noise isn't ideal either. Although it was mentioned here that even while practicing the Om technique, so we are actually closing off the ears. It says, I can still hear the world. And furthermore, that the person's ears in general remain hyper-attuned to the external sounds of the world. Now, I don't think outer noise and distractions are just this person's problem only. But if it is ours as well, then I would say the next level question arising from this might be to ask ourselves, why? Why am I so hyper-attuned to the external world when I'm trying to meditate? Or to ask, what might help to shift that attunement or attention to the internal world that I'm trying to enter? And I was reminded, for example, we've experienced, or we all know, if we're reading an interesting book, we're with someone we love, don't the bits in our environment fade into the background, so to speak? They're there, but they're not as present. We're not hyper-attuned. We're hyper-attuned to what we're doing that's interesting, or with the person that we're with. And so whether we're meditating in the quietest place or the noisiest place, the question really is, what will make our meditation the most interesting thing in that moment and help lead our attention within? And for sure, one answer is to infuse our meditation with devotion, fanning the inner flame of what Sri Yukteswar called the heart's natural love that doesn't have to be created, only awakened. And this also relates to that previous question we just considered, being sure we have a personal and loving aspect of God that we're meditating on, and even more importantly, meditating with. Brother Nanamoy, who many of you knew or have met through his recorded talks, used to say how when he was in India, he saw how reverently devotees would install the so-called deity in the temple. And he said that's exactly what we need to do in meditation. He said to first install the deity, so to speak, that personal aspect of God that we hold most dear and that inspires us, and place it in the inner mystic temple of our heart. And then whether it's noisy or quiet, hot or cold, we will always have a good meditation because we're meditating with a loving, listening, living presence, our beloved, that personal aspect of God. And perhaps one other point as regards this question, we might even ask, is the noise and sound of the fire trucks and the sirens necessarily bad? Especially if we reflect in that moment that those fire trucks or ambulances, they're not just some abstract noise, they're being driven by fellow human beings to other fellow human beings that are in they have a terrible, horrific need at that point. Or similarly, that the sound of the traffic in general, what does it represent? It's us. It's mothers and fathers and people like us needing to go to work, to earn a living, to provide for our families and our children, or just to provide value to society in general. And again, I thought, imagine if it was a fire truck or ambulance coming to our home. That would be a beautiful sound, huh? We can't wait to hear that sound at that moment. It's interesting. That's why our Guru said that circumstances are essentially neutral. This gives an example of what that is. It's our attitude, or it's our mind. It's how we frame or what that sound perhaps means to us at any given time. One final thought here. In one of those books, those stories of near-death experiences, I remember reading one some years ago, and somebody had gotten in a terrible car accident. They found themselves floating above their body, looking down at the crash scene. And then, of course, they were aware they were with a loving guide. And as they were looking down, this person said that they saw all these rays of light flowing up from the crash scene into their being. And they asked the guide, they said, what are those rays of light? And the guide said, those are the prayers of people driving by, asking God to help whoever is in that car. So, how beautiful really is all this potentially. And so not only is the person helped by those prayers, but we're helped too through the compassion that joins us all together as this one, large, beautiful human family. So I guess I would say in summary on this question, that, just say a prayer and then go back to your meditation. And don't give up practicing these transformative techniques of pranayama. They will work. They do work. Go into the lessons. Try to master them, because in time they will also withdraw our energy. But these other, our mental attitude of devotion and framing our environment in a different way, they won't get in the way of practicing the techniques of pranayama. Those techniques will likely become even more effective. I'm backtracking here because I jumped over something that I feel is beautiful to say, because this is also the guidance. Saying a prayer is the guidance that our Guru gave to the early disciples like Miramak and Brother Nanamoy and others who lived at the busy and noisy Hollywood ashram, where some of you may have gone or will go for a pilgrimage. with a hospital right across the street. Imagine our monks and devotees, who some of you, no doubt, live there. And so our Guru taught them to take a moment whenever they heard a siren or fire truck and so forth, to pray for the person being attended to and those first responders who were on their way to provide that assistance. So again, it's a beautiful practice. Okay, now the next question is, in the lessons, our Guru so often reminds us how important it is to keep a straight spine in meditation, but also to relax. I find that as soon as I relax, I tend to slump, and I end up spending too much time in meditation straightening up. Is there a way to maintain correct, ideal posture and still be fully relaxed? I've never figured that out. Well, yeah, I mean, first off, it's to realize that right posture or asana is an entire step in itself, that third step in the Eightfold Path of Patanjali that our Guru teaches. So understandably, this step of right posture can take time to practice and become proficient in. But the first thing I think we would say, and which is really good advice for all of us from time to time, and that is to review the basics of the meditation posture in Lesson 1 on pages 12 to 14. And from that lesson, I'd like to focus on one point in particular, which reads, with palms upturned, rest each hand on the corresponding thigh where it joins the abdominal region to help prevent the body from bending forward. And in the next sentence, it explains, this position of the hands also helps you to keep the shoulders back and the chest out. And then it shows some illustrations of this. So of course, we're all differently put together with different size legs and arms and so forth. And our Guru himself says it's okay to make common sense adjustments in these instructions. But for sure, when we place the hands there at the juncture of the thigh and abdomen or close to it, as it says in the lesson, it automatically helps to keep the shoulders back, the chest expands, the head and neck tend to straighten as well. So there's basically a straight line running from the head all the way down through the spine. Versus what happens when the hands are more out toward the knees, which tends to round the shoulders. It starts to pull the head forward and down. The weight of the head starts to pull us away from that erect posture. So the movement of the hands acts like a kind of natural hinge or fulcrum that, again, naturally pulls and holds the body straight and in place, strong, but relaxed. So let's try this for a moment. First, sit in the meditation posture. And first, rest the hands with palms upturned at the juncture of the thighs and abdomen. And notice, when you do that, how the shoulders, aren't they automatically pulled back? Isn't the chest automatically pushed out and open? And notice especially how you feel in this position. Then slowly start to slide the hands down towards the knees. And do you see and feel how the shoulders immediately start to round off, and you start to feel probably the weight of the head pulling down and forward, which again makes it harder to sit upright. But now again, slide the hands back toward the abdomen, and again, feel the difference. Okay, but again, this is the so-called bow of meditation mentioned in the Gita, where, like Arjuna, we're poised, but we're relaxed, ready to release the arrows of our devotion and concentration toward God's presence within. And when in this position, we also lift the gaze to the point between the eyebrows. There are currents that are flowing then up to that Christ or Kutastha center that similarly create an upward influence on the body and further help us to keep the body upright, strong, but relaxed. I would also say, though, in conclusion, there often are other little practical points that will help our posture, depending on the individual or because even that position of the hands may be hard for somebody for various reasons. So if this is a challenge, I suggest make a counseling appointment if there's still time while you're here or somewhere else with one of the monastics or online who can dive into this further with you and according to what may be your own specific needs. Okay, now the next question is, how long a period of steadiness is necessary for pratyahara, meaning interiorization of the consciousness? It is difficult to stay still after techniques. Please help. Okay, regarding how long, I think it's 8 minutes, 7 minutes and 26 seconds. Okay, obviously just kidding. But if you would, let's, again, try a little experiment along the lines of what Brother Bhumananda had us do last evening. Let's close our eyes for a moment. Turn our gaze upward to that sacred point between the eyebrows and look intently into that center. Wow. What just happened? I'm sure, what just happened to the body and thoughts? Did they not fade into the background? Are we not already on the fringe of that state of stillness, or even a bit more, just by lifting the gaze? Something magical happens. Again, do this again. Just lift the gaze. It's almost like we can't think anymore. The thoughts are gone. And so we can open our eyes now. But our Guru said that's because, again, the position of the eyes, when they're horizontal, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you, we're in our conscious mind. When the gaze is lifted, we're in that's the superconscious state, or helps us to further get to that state of consciousness. So when we lift the gaze, it's like, I tried it. You should try it sometime, Max. Try to think maybe that's not a good suggestion. But it's hard. I wanted to know, I see like just lifting the gaze. These are these are metaphysical truths. That's why it's a science. That's why it's so important to keep the gaze there at the point between the eyebrows. So the point is, I would say, we don't need to make meditation so complicated. In a sense, it's the most natural practice in the world, because it's just spending time resting in our natural state of being, ourself. And with with our greatest friend and lover, that aspect of God, just resting together. In other words, I think we could say we don't meditate to become something or someone that we're not, as if we're grasping for something. We meditate to realize what and who we already are. We're already that perfect, calm, beautiful, loving, divine spark and soul image that always was and always will be. Now, of course, as the question points out, we naturally want to extend that period of stillness and steadiness, that we might enter ever more deeply into that interior state and stay in that state of stillness longer. So one suggestion is to be sure that we do what we just did for those few moments, but practice longer. And as our President, Brother Chidananda, has us often do in the meditation he leads us in, and that is after the techniques, he would say to lock or rivet our attention at the Christ center, that divine portal, as we know he calls it. And then don't move, don't think, just be aware at the spiritual eye, and let that, see what happens. Again, let that powerful center start to pull us in like a divine tractor beam, in a sense, into the embrace of its stillness. And then if after some time we start to feel a bit restless, then we go back to sort of the answer the other, we start to practice devotion. We talk to God, talk to our beloved friend, and lover. In the lessons, our Guru said, make love to God with all our mind, all our heart, all our soul, all our strength, meaning offering our love and energy or prana back to its source in the spine and brain. And then again, without getting discouraged, if we keep on, we heard that story from Brother Bhumananda, we just keep on. And over time, we see our meditations do become deeper, they do become sweeter, and those periods of stillness become longer. Now, the next question says, I've always been very serious about my spiritual efforts and practice of the techniques, but probably due to some karmic situation, or maybe it's my faulty concentration, I've never been able to receive the results from the practice of Hangsa, Om, and Kriya that Master describes. Of course, I keep trying, but basically I realize I've given up hope and settle for and enjoy the results I do receive, such as a sense of well-being, more harmony in my life, positivity, and peace. Would Master be disappointed by my lack of spiritual ambition? I don't know what you're laughing at, but did anyone besides me hear what results were mentioned? Let me read them again. A sense of well-being, more harmony in my life, more positivity, more peace. I won't embarrass you, but I almost want to say, if you're here, please stand up. Let us give you a round of applause. So wherever you are. Now, of course, we know and we aspire, and our Guru's calling us always for greater and greater experience and oneness with God, and none of us will turn down all the different results that he describes in the lessons. But again, as staying with some of the talks that Brother Anandamoy used to give us, he'd often ask, why are we meditating in the first place? He would say, is it for the consolations and gifts from God, or is it just to offer our love to God? Again, he would give examples like this, and we could think, when we see somebody that we love dearly, first thing we don't say is, what do you have for me? You have something? What are you going to give me? No, we're so excited in that moment. It awakens that heart's natural love. We want to give love to that person. We're satisfied being in love with giving love. And that's that's why our Guru emphasizes devotion. Imagine if we had that same feeling. And in fact, Sri Dayamata said that we should think, we can use that as a technique. When we're in meditation, we can think of somebody that we do have that beautiful love with, that beautiful friendship. And we'll feel something in our heart. And she says, immediately transfer that to God, who is the source of that anyway. It's not fooling ourselves. It's really, again, trying to awaken what's already there. So, of course, we should do our best in every day, every meditation. Try to make that best better. Just mentioned, to go after God and love him with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, all our strength. But then leave any response to him. There's no contradiction. Sometimes we all think, Master says I should say, reveal thyself. But then if he's already with me, why am I asking him to reveal himself? Door of my heart, wilt thou come? But he's supposed to be with me. Well, of course, we're knocking on that door. We want to be with God, obviously. But then again, in that little beautiful book, Metaphysical Meditation, it says, yet if need be, what does it say? Let us know that I am praying. Let us know that I love no other. Yet whether thou comest to me or not, I will wait for thee, though it be for eternity. That's love. That's love. So we leave the response to him. I was thinking Jesus didn't say, love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, as long as God responds to you. Otherwise give up. Jesus didn't add that other little point. And otherwise, again, once more, Brother Nandamoy, he would say, that's not love, that's a contract. So we should sort of see, do I have this like contract consciousness about meditation? So again, I started saying, yes, we have to go use our mind, look for the points, learn how to do this, learn the science, but not make the science so complicated. Just keep the science simple, if that makes sense. So let's listen to some words from Guruji about this. And in fact, Brother Kartikananda also read parts of this quote yesterday. Our Guru said, a common cause of spiritual discouragement is the devotee's expectation that God's response will come in a great blaze of awe-inspiring inner illumination. This erroneous notion dulls the devotee's perceptions of the subtle divine responses that are present from the very beginning of one's meditative practices. And I thought to ask, is anybody just starting out with these teachings here at Convocation, just starting out with meditation? Because if so, the divine, our Guru says, the divine is there responding right from the beginning of your meditative practices. And then he goes on, God responds to the devotee's every effort, every devotional call. It's like, okay, pause. It's like God responds, our Guru says, not just to some efforts, or if we're having a good day, or if God's having a good day. Every effort. It's amazing. Every devotional call. Don't we call to God in meditation? God responds to every devotional call. And then our Guru goes on and says, even as a novice, you will realize this in your own seeking if you learn to recognize him as the quiet inner peace that steals over your consciousness. This peace is the first proof of God's presence within. He said, you will know it is he who has guided and inspired you to some right decision in your life. You will feel his strength empowering you to overcome bad habits and nurture spiritual qualities. You will know him as the ever-increasing joy and love that surges deep within, overflowing into your everyday life and relationships. And then our whole life becomes a form of meditation, union with God. That is the goal. So if we were to, I think, perhaps summarize the spirit of these points of meditation, I think it would be that, as our Guru said, he would say, God watches the heart. Or, rewinding to that other question, not the back, so to speak. God watches the heart. And I think in the same way, that God doesn't watch what we don't accomplish, but what we do. I heard it said that God is the only judge that values effort more than success. Isn't that nice? And if our heart is pure, God watches the heart. If our heart is pure, if our heart is true, if our heart is loving, if our heart is loyal and giving, then in a sense we've already attained. And we then just go on, as our Guru said in his definition of self-realization, each day we try to improve our knowing. We drink a little bit more of that lake of sweetness. Our former president, Sri Mirali Mata, said something so beautiful in this regard as well. She once said, if we are doing our best, however much that might be at the time, and approach God like a child, sincerely trying to love him to the best of our ability, she said, we are already a perfect devotee, on our way to becoming a perfected devotee. See that there's a big difference. So many think, well, I'm not perfect. We are perfect, according to her definition, according to this definition. On our way to drinking a little more each day of that infinite lake of sweetness. And so meditation, of course, is a science, as mentioned, and one that we should really try to follow to the best of our ability. But meditation is also an art, and beyond that is already touched. It's a romance. Meditation, it's a romance with the infinite. In fact, our Guru said something so astounding about this in a quote many of you will already be familiar with. It's one of my top 3 astounding quotes or something. So, but he said, as many of you will remember, there is a personal element in the search for God that is more important than mastery over the whole science of yoga. A personal element more important than mastery over the whole science of yoga. Now, for us Bhaktas, that doesn't mean we don't do our best to apply the science and diligently work at those meditation techniques each day. But for the jnanis and scientists, we have to realize that the science of yoga alone won't do it either. I was thinking, God, isn't that like this big cosmic vending machine, And, we put in so many minutes of this technique and so many minutes of that practice, and, out come the goodies, So, but rather, as our Guru said, the searcher of hearts wants only your sincere love. He is like a little child, our Master said. Someone may offer him his whole wealth, and he doesn't want it. And another cries to him, "Oh Lord, I love you." And into that devotee's heart, he comes running. Running. 5 words. Yeah. "Oh Lord, I love you," okay? 3 words, "I love you." Or 1 word, "you." Dayama on the other said that they would sometimes come into our Guru's room. He would just be sitting cross-legged on his bed in ecstasy, just saying, "You." How beautiful is that? Just you, just beholding his Divine Mother. And in the new book of Sri Dayamata's talk, she said, in fact, God is actually lonely for your love. He is crying for your love, our love. And she said so simply, but again so profoundly, include him in your life. That is what he wants. And I thought in relation to our questions, and that means to include him in our meditation as well. Include him in our meditation. It sounds obvious, but it's not always so. So now one final question before we close. Someone wrote, the more I practice the SRF techniques, the more empathetic I become, to the point where I feel others' pain intensely. Do you have any practical guidance on how I can feel for others without taking on their pain and suffering? And this is a very interesting question, I think, and demonstrates how, yes, through the practice of meditation, as we've been talking about, and as our consciousness naturally starts to expand, we'll very likely find we do become more empathetic. We feel more compassion. We become more loving and kind, more tuned in to others and life around us. And for some of us, we might find when we're talking with somebody who's describing what they're going through or some physical or emotional pain, we may start to actually feel a bit of that in ourselves, perhaps in a certain part of our body and so forth, which might help us to better understand. Maybe that gives us some information of kind of understand what they're going through. But I would say if that's the case, it's only meant to be a guide. Not that we're meant to hold on to that energy or bring it into ourselves. In fact, I had an opportunity, I was speaking with Mrilini Mata about this subject once, and she said, as we know, she said, only the Guru or someone of that status knows whether it is God ordained to take on someone else's suffering. And although this person asking the question didn't explicitly mention about taking on karma, there can understandably be an unconscious desire on our part to want to alleviate other suffering and take it on ourselves. We're not even aware of it. We're not trying to be some big hero. We just can't help it. And of course, this doesn't mean we don't try to do all we can to lessen somebody's burden or pain. But Mrilima was added that in a spiritual sense, how that suffering or experience is often there or could be there for a reason, to impart some particular life lesson or some wisdom to an individual. And so even if we were able to remove that from the other person, that person's just going to have to eventually go through that experience sometime in future. And now there's 2 people who are sick. if we take that on. I remember you've heard our guru give the example how if someone falls into a ditch, you don't get down in the ditch with them. But again, I wondered how many of us, it's not instinctive like, oh, I'll jump into the ditch with you to offer comfort, because we have this empathy. We see them suffering. But then as before, there's two people in the ditch, right? Now there's two people that at least we're yelling a little louder. Somebody might hear us. But the point is, the greater way is to indeed stand on the edge of that cliff and say, here's my hand, let me help you. That's what the person needs. They need to get out of that ditch that they have fallen into. And maybe they say, no, I'm afraid, come down, help me. But we say, no, here's my hand, you can do it. And that's really helping that person. It's restoring their bravery, their courage, their ability to help themselves. What a great gift that is. And then I thought, once they're out, then we give them all the hugs we want, So, but all kidding aside, we know it's far, far from easy to see someone in pain, especially someone we love, and especially if we know that pain is likely to last a long time. But ultimately, it's not meant for their harm or ours. As our Guru said in the Gita, that karma is not meant to punish. It's meant to show us in what way a previous action was not in tune with Dharma, so that we can avoid repeating, going through that same kind of suffering again. Now, the question also asked if there was any practical guidance in how we can feel for others without taking on their pain and suffering. And in this regard, I would say one of the most powerful and practical and spiritually practical things we can do to alleviate others' pain and our own is to pray for that person, and specifically to use our Guru's healing technique for taking the empathy we feel and turn that into energy that can then be sent out to those in need. I remember some years back, I was feeling a lot of pain and helplessness, really, having to witness the suffering of someone close to me. But I found when I practiced the healing technique, rotated the hands, that I had a way to move those emotions through my body and transform it into a different or a purer type of energy that I could then release and send out. It was like what at helplessness in the beginning, I thought, I have something I can do with that feeling of concern, and not just feel helpless, I wish I could do something. I take the love, take the empathy, take the pain I'm feeling, and again, transform that into energy and send that out, which in a tangible way helps that person and gives us a sense of peace and comfort as well. So before we close, why don't we practice Guruji's healing technique and send out this wonderful healing energy to others in the world, like we did this morning after our meditation with Brother Chidananda. So let us once more close our eyes, and for a few moments think of someone we know who may be in need of that divine healing power, and that may be causing us some bit of pain as well. And as we do so, visualize the light and love of God surrounding and permeating that person or group of people. And then let us expand that flame of love to include all those in this room, or wherever you may be listening, tuning in with us. And then in our case, then expand that to everyone in the hotel. And then out into Los Angeles. And then beyond that in all directions, north, south, east, and west, until we engulf and include every nation, every living thing on this beautiful planet we call home, in that divine light and all healing love. And now remaining in our seats, let us rub our palms together, gathering energy in our hands. And then raise our arms and send out those powerful healing vibrations as we chant Om for healing of the body. Now rotate the hands around each other. Feeling the energy gathering there if we can. Visualize or imagine or feel. And then raise them as we chant Om and send out vibrations of healing of the mind. And now rub the palms once more. Now raise them for the healing of soul ignorance. And then once more for world peace and harmony. Peace. Amen. And don't we feel somewhat cleansed or rejuvenated ourselves when we practice that technique? So again, in answer to that question, it's a way to move that energy of compassion and empathy and send it out to others. So in closing, I wish you all a most wonderful rest of Convocation, and of course, peace and harmony, happiness, joy, love, everything for you, your family, all your loved ones. Jai Guru.